For the past 3 episodes of Severance, I was almost certain that we'd been watching Helena on the severed floor. I kept thinking, if that's true, we'll probably never get Helly back, and I was trying to figure out how that might play out. But at the end of episode 4, I had one of those not like that moments. Not after another character we've grown attached to nearly drowns in freezing cold water near the largest waterfall on the planet. The good news? We no longer have to debate which version of Helly was hanging out in MDR. The bad news? Well, it's heartbreaking, especially with Herb's immediate and permanent dismissal. Thank goodness for Audi Herb's ongoing storyline, which means we won't be losing John Turturro anytime soon. But on some level, this feels like a real death for the Innie. If they brought him back, it would undermine the stakes of the decisions the Innies make. Speaking of stakes, I wonder how Innie Mark will feel about his steamy night in the tent with Helena once the implications sink in. Of course, that's only part of the problem. They've also let the future CEO of Lumon in on everything they've been planning and doing in their search for Miss Casey. This is going to take some time to process, which is how I felt through much of this episode. While I'm usually all for a weird, experimental episode, I think I might be in the minority of fans who didn't absolutely love this one. Don't get me wrong, it was a good episode, just not perfect or my favorite. It didn't quite live up to the hype I saw online from early reviews. My main issue was how disorienting it all felt. The first time I watched it, I couldn't tell if any of it was really happening. I'm guessing that was intentional. It's the Innies' first sanctioned trip outside, and they had no idea it was coming. The confusion was meant to mirror their experience, and I think the writers and director Ben Stiller wanted us to feel that disorientation alongside them. The episode opens with Innie Mark waking up outside, with Dylan shouting from atop a frozen lake. Mark responds from a nearby hill, and they're all dressed for the freezing weather. All 4 MDR Innies eventually wake up in different spots, but the way it's shot makes it feel like they're materializing out of thin air. When they finally come together, no one knows what's going on. A version of Kier's hymn, sounding like it's from an old video game, draws them to a TV where Mr. Milchick explains the situation. He welcomes them to their first outdoor retreat, a team-building exercise called the Egan Outdoor Retreat, or YOR. He tells them their Audis have agreed to let them be activated for 2 days outside the office in the Egan National Forest so they can experience the outside world. The name Egan is new to them, and to us, and Milchick explains it's from the 4th Appendix, a sacred text forbidden on the severed floor. The YOR is essentially a quest. They must make their way to Scissor Cave, where Kier supposedly tamed the 4 tempers, to find this book he dictated in his final hours. They'll have help along the way, and maybe some temptation because Milchick warns them, stray not from Kier's path, lest you rouse nature's wrath. The setup feels like a continuing lore drop for the Innies, and as viewers, we know not to trust a word Milchick says. The help comes in the form of shadowy figures who look like the Innies, but are slightly off. Shadow Mark points them in a direction, which ties back to a mysterious man we saw in episode 1. This detail is super interesting because the shadow versions of the MDR team are all credited in the episode, and Shadow Mark is played by the same actor who appeared in the hallway. It's a curious detail that adds to the mystery. For the episode skips the opening credits and dives into what feels like aimless wandering, punctuated by stunning landscape shots. Shadow Helly points them towards Scissor Cave, where they find the 4th Appendix mounted on a wall. The text tells the story of a boyhood trip Kier took to Woe's Hollow, and the Innies are meant to follow in his footsteps. Irv, of course, is the most excited about this new lore, which turns out to be an allegory for masturbation. The Innies don't fully grasp this, but it's hilariously obvious to us as the voiceover reads lines like, "He spilt his lineage upon the soil." The tension between the team builds as they come across a dead seal. Irv suggests eating it, which leads to a heated argument. Mark brings up Irv's bad experience the last time he went outside, and Irv gets defensive. The encounter feels staged, but it's unclear if Lumon orchestrated it. Either way, it serves as a grim foreshadowing of Irv's eventual fate. When they reach Woe's Hollow, Milchick is waiting for them, along with their shadow doubles. He explains that Kier's twin was always with him, which is why they've provided shadows for each of them. The doubles look odd, stiff, and unnatural, almost like animatronics. This ties back to the Perpetuity Wing, where we've heard about Lumon's animatronic figures. The theory that the shadows are mechanical adds a layer of intrigue, though it's unclear how this fits into Lumon's larger plans. Milchik commends them for reaching the sacred earth where Kier once stood and assures them Lumon will always protect and provide. They're treated to a glamping experience: luxury meats, heated tents, branded marshmallows, and torches for light and warmth. It's a surreal contrast to the innies' usual sterile environment. Helena tries to win over Irv, joking about the seal and admitting she's embarrassed. Irv remains suspicious, accusing her of lying about the night gardener and calling her out for her closeness with Mark. The tension boils over at the campfire, where Helena turns the group against Irv, calling him lonely and accusing him of being upset because he can't see Bert. Irv storms off into the dark, and the group is more divided than ever. Meanwhile, Mark and Helena share a moment in the tent. Mark finally makes a move, and things escalate quickly. As they get intimate, the episode cuts to Irv wandering alone in the dark, losing his torch and collapsing against a rock. The contrast between the warmth of the tent and the cold, dark forest is stark. Back in the tent, Helena seems to come clean, saying she didn't like who she was outside. Mark responds with a poignant question: "Who are you?" It's a play on TH's central question of the series, and Mark adds that he doesn't care who she is outside, he cares who she is with him. This moment digs into the extra dimension of Helena's jealousy of her innie's freedom and connection with Mark. Their post-coital bliss is interrupted when Mark has a reintegration flash, seeing Gemma. It's the only hint we get that he underwent the session with Rigabi at the end of the last episode. Helena notices his disorientation, but they don't discuss it further. Meanwhile, Irv isn't dead. He wakes up in a dreamlike state, walking through the frozen forest in his work attire. He finds the MDR cubicle, where the screen displays a negative image and bugs flit around. He sits down to work on a file named Montag, and Bert appears, smiling at him from the other side. Then he sees Woe from the fourth appendix illustration typing away at another terminal. The dream is eerie and surreal, with the numbers on the screen rearranging to spell out Egan. Irv wakes up by the rock, alive but shaken, and starts running. The simplest explanation is that Irv can access his outie subconscious while asleep, which ties back to his late-night coffee drinking to induce dozing during office hours. But there's clearly more going on here, and it's something we'll need to unpack further. Irv confronts Helena at the waterfall, accusing her of being an Egan. He grabs her and starts pulling her toward the water, screaming that she's an outie and demanding Milchik reactivate Helly. The scene is incredibly intense, with Irv seemingly crossing a point of no return. Helena, realizing her life is in danger, screams for Milchik to do something. Milchik radios someone to remove the Glasscock block, and Helly wakes up while her head is still submerged. Irv apologizes as Helly tries to figure out what's happening. Milchik orders Irv to stand and condemns him for threatening collegial murder. The only penalty is immediate and permanent dismissal. Dylan screams in regret, and INV tries to comfort him, saying it's okay. Just remember, hang in there. The episode ends with Irv being marched into the forest, where Milchik shuts him down with the words, "May Kier's mercy follow you into the eternal dark." It's a powerful ending, and I loved how they handled the reveal of Helena's true identity. The mystery was fun to follow, but I'm glad it's resolved so we can focus on other questions. One thing that stood out to me was Helena's jealousy of her innie's freedom and connection with Mark. It's an interesting dynamic, especially considering her privileged position as an Egan. The idea that she might be envious of her innie's ability to form genuine relationships adds depth to her character. As for Irv, his dismissal raises questions about whether he'll return. I think it's more likely we'll see more of his outie, especially given the hints about his connection to Bert. The fallout from this episode will be significant, and I'm curious to see how the remaining characters react. Overall, this episode brought things full circle with the reveal and the loss of a major character. While the disorienting first half took me out of the story a bit, the ending was fantastic. I'm excited to see where the show goes from here. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this breakdown, don't forget to like